could Hendon Hooker be the answer to the Colts quarterback questions? We'll answer that today on Locked On Colts. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, guys, I have Jonathan Hagler here with me today, so you guys know exactly what we're doing today. We're talking quarterbacks. You know, Hag is going to be the QB expert for you guys. This is what you're going to associate him with because I bring him on here to talk quarterbacks. But, you know, we technically have one more of the big four quarterbacks to talk about, and that's Bryce Young. And we want to talk about Bryce Young. It's just, you know, the vibe's not there. We think he's going to go to the Houston Texans or maybe one to the Carolina Panthers. I don't think he's going to be there for the Colts. We might still, you know, mix him in, but let's talk about a quarterback who, even though it's not very realistic, might be a little bit more realistic than Bryce Young. And that is the scenario where the Colts take a Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson or Christian Gonzalez or whoever at 4, right? Or Jalen Carter, whatever you want to go with. And then they trade up in the late first, or they just take Hendon Hooker at 35, whatever. We're going to talk about Hendon Hooker. We're going to go into this game that he is. And I know we talked about it earlier this week. Me and Jake did on the podcast, and I was fairly harsh on Hendon Hooker. And it's not on Hendon Hooker as the person or the player, just on the Colts taking him. But we're gonna do this whole episode the way that we've been doing it, guys, where the first segment we talk about the positives of Hendon Hooker. Second segment we talk about the negatives, and third, how he could fit in the NFL. So to kind of start off with Hendon Hooker, I know, Hag, you're pretty high on him comparatively to the rest of the draft world. Maybe not Mike Tannenbaum level high, where you're having him go 5th overall to the Seahawks. But I will say one thing about Hendon Hooker before I kick it to you is, I know the Colts value this, and I know that a lot of other teams do, but when you have a player who transfers, right, teams are really weird about that, where they sometimes love it, sometimes hate it. But one thing they do like is when a player transfers up in competition. Yeah. You know, when you go from a school like Virginia Tech, who, good program, like they've been on the downturn the last couple of years, but good program in the ACC. And instead of going to like the FCS or going to like Houston or something, you know, like one of those schools where you can throw for 1,000 yards and look good against easy defenses, he went to the SEC, and he didn't go to LSU or Alabama where it's a little bit easier. He went to Tennessee, who has some talent, but it's not like, again, you're not talking Alabama talent. You have some good talent. You have some good talent in Tennessee. Don't get me wrong. A lot of first-round guys around him. But he goes to Tennessee to compete in the SEC, and his game explodes. So when I'm looking at Hendon Hooker and I'm looking at a transfer player, I love that a player went to a tougher conference against tougher competition, and his game kept getting better.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think Hendon does a lot of things really well. He has a lot of positives about his game. And I think when you evaluate him, it's easy to see why people are trending up on him, right? From a pure quarterback standpoint, I like his release. I like his arm. You know, it's a strong arm. It's an athletic arm. You know, I mean, it's not flat, things like that. He has plus athleticism. He's a dual threat quarterback, but he's pass first. Don't ever get it twisted. Yeah. And he does a lot of things from a technical standpoint. Well, I mean, I think he's had time to, you know, clean those things up, you know, given his age. Yes. But Hendon's a clean quarterback from a pure, you know, prototype standpoint. And, you know, there's going to be knocks on the system and things like that, and we'll get into that later. But I like the arm. I like the athleticism. I like the processing. And we'll get into it, like I said. But he's very decisive, I feel like, in most moments. And those are things I like most about his game. And, you know, he brings a lot to the table.
Yeah. And, you know, a lot of things that we look at too as evaluators and look at when it comes to the college game, I know this is something that you look at, is how do these guys perform in the big moments against big teams? And when the moment is too bright, do they crumble or do they step up. And yes, against Georgia, he had some rough moments and not some great moments.
It was raining.
Raining. It was all raining. That's all it was there. But, it's a tough game, obviously, against Georgia's defense. But against Alabama this year, he came to play. And he was chucking it against Alabama. And that was kind of his Heisman moment before it got derailed later in the season with his injury. So, again, tough kid, good kid, has continually improved, transferred up to higher competition, and then beat Bama. Beat Bama. I know this wasn't the Bama team like years past, but it's still Bama. It's still Bama.
As a Alabama guy, he beat Bama. Trust me, it's a big thing. I do. At the moment, I was saying they're gonna pull it off, and then I just realized it hit me, and they're carrying the goalpost out of the stadium, and I'm just like, I honestly don't remember the last time Tennessee beat Alabama. I was so young. I remember I was in Little League, but Hendon Hooker's a gamer, and that's the best thing about him. I think he's a gamer. He's been very confident throughout the draft process. He's been killing it for an injured guy, for an injured quarterback. His stock has been going up in a weird way because the way he's handled the interview process, the way he worked Indy, he's handled the process great. So shout out to him and his team. They've been killing it on the draft process.
Yeah, and the biggest thing with Hendon Hooker that we have to acknowledge is, I think he knows this because he's selling himself this way. He is selling himself to every human being that covers football, watches football, any person associated with the NFL. Hey, I'm the next Jalen Hurts. I'm the high character guy, the experienced guy who, had a rough start to the college career, but improved over time and put the stats together late. And you want to bet on my upside and my character to kind of make me help me turn it. And I honestly think that, if he were younger and there was more upside and stuff like that with it, I could totally see the Jalen Hurts conversation because it is fairly similar. He goes to an offense that kind of accentuates his skills a little bit, lets him kind of feast on spacing and a lot of certain things there at the college game. The stats look better. He looks like a better passer. He's more than just that runner late in his career. And then you're betting on that character because, when you look at Hendon Hooker, this is a high character guy. Really, really well-spoken dude, great leader. Obviously, again, he's an older quarterback, but he carries himself like an older person, like an older quarterback and player. He carries himself like an NFL player. And that's something you're buying with him.
Oh yeah, no. In my head, Hendon's the cool uncle.
Yeah.
Draft process, and that's been the best part about it. When you talk about the Jalen Hurts thing, the thing that stands out about Jalen Hurts is the maturity that he carries himself with. It's the type of person he was when he transferred, right? And this is a guy that had a ton of success. I think the media had done a good job of trying to act like Jalen didn't have success early, but he definitely had adversity. Because he was the SEC Offensive Freshman of the Year, led Alabama to the national championship, led Alabama back to the national championship, or they get knocked out. Oh, no, he had a rough game against Clemson, right? And so this is a guy that experienced adversity after having success. And that's the thing with Hendon that I love because he transferred. It wasn't like he just lit it up right away.
Right.
You know what I mean? He had his success, new coach, new weapons around him. Like you said, it wasn't an LSU. It wasn't an Alabama. It wasn't a Georgia. But he made that offense work. And just to speak on some more of his strengths, when you talk about being in control of an offense, he was in control from a pass pro standpoint, from a identification, because, the offense is what it is, but you still have to make the reads and make the throws. And he did that to a T all year long.
Yeah, for sure. And some other couple notes here that I know you've hit on a lot of things here, but with Hendon Hooker, I do think he has a pretty good pocket presence. Now he does get, because again, the stupid offense that we're going to talk about in the next segment here, he's not taking traditional drops and reads and 3-step drops or 5-step drops. So the footwork does get a little statuesque at times just because he's not moving his feet to start every single play. But when he does get that feel that he has to move from the pocket, it's not just spin around, run out the back every single time and let me get sacked. He will climb up through the junk. He will move forward and create yardage when there could have been a sack or a negative yardage play. I do think there are a lot of positive things to build. And obviously, again, when you talk about the athleticism, you look at him with read options and RPO type stuff, and he's pretty efficient with it. I do think there is a way you could build an offense with him to work. And I do see at times, I see some Jalen Hurts to him. I do see some Geno Smith to him too, where he's efficient down the field, efficient deep, can also move a little bit, but does get a little stiff in the pocket at times. I do see some Geno Smith. So yeah, I think there are a lot of good things to build around with him. It's just, again, not character-wise, but when you're looking at all the red flags and all the things that lead you to think why he might not succeed in the NFL, he's a terrifying prospect in like round 2 or especially in round 1.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, when you look at Geno coming out, right?
Yeah.
At one point when Geno was at West Virginia, he had more touchdowns than incompletions. Right. Yeah. It was insane. Geno was a thing. Like, and people forget because like he's had success this past year, right? But Geno was a talented passer that kind of fell out of favor in the NFL. Then had the weird jaw incident where he got his jaw broke and all the craziness, right? But you look at how he's handled it with the maturity, and he still had the ability to play at a high level. Hendon Hooker may not be good right away or the second year or third year. He may have his best season at 29, 30. You know what I mean? It's not unlikely, but the problem is going to be which team is going to be patient enough to allow him to do that.
Right, exactly. That's the big thing we talked about with Will Levis, the big thing we talked about with Anthony Richardson. And unfortunately, Hooker doesn't have as much time, but that's going to lead us into our next segment here where we talk about some of the weaknesses, some of the concerns with Hendon Hooker. But first, the NCAA tournament is closing up. It's almost at the end, guys, but now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to who's going to cut down the net. Plus, FanDuel will even let you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 with bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel. All right, Hag. So to throw out a couple concerns here, to start with Hendon Hooker, the ACL tear. He's going to miss a lot of spring ball. I know that he said he's going to be ready for like OTAs and stuff like that and be ready for a lot of the offseason stuff. But even if he is completely ready, you're still going to have to be working up that ACL, working up confidence. You never know how players are going to respond to an ACL injury. Some players are better at, it's all mental. I actually had a player the other day explain to me the whole process that he went through after he tore his ACL and how, he had to get his leg to like 90-degree angles at certain times at night and stuff like that. And then it became the on-field stuff. So it's a crazy process. And he's going
100%. My fiance, she tore hers in college. So I've seen it up close and personal.
Yeah. So he's going through that. Again, he's older than, he's like our age, Hag. Like what year was your class? What year did you come out?
20 was high school. So my draft class when I came out was 2018 because I redshirted and did the whole deal. So I spent the full 5.
He's close to our age, man. He's close to our age.
But that's what I tell people all the time. I was like, I couldn't imagine playing college football at 23, 24, 25. Like the stuff that I like, it's cheating. Yeah, I made it through college without surgery, right? I probably would have had 1 or 2 if I played a year or 2 more. But I can imagine it's you're so much more mature that 1 or 2 years later, understanding playbooks, concepts, things like that, doing school work from that standpoint is a lot easier, dog. I promise.
So you got a 26-year-old quarterback coming off the ACL injury. And honestly, I don't really care as much about those two things. Yeah. But when you put it into when you talk about him with that offense, let's talk about that offense here, Hag. I don't think people properly understand why this offense is so awful when it comes to transitioning to the NFL. So Hag, put on your scheme hat here and talk about why this offense is just tough to translate to the NFL.
It's tough to translate to the NFL because it's very vanilla, right? It's so simple, and that's why the numbers are gaudy. That's why you see Hyatt not being who winning the Thorpe and light college football up statistically. People don't respect it because he's not a defined route runner. He's not a route salesman because he wasn't required to be. It's run a slant here, option route here, run a wheel route here. You know what I'm saying? Things like that. And those are the reads that he's making. He's reading one single person, and it's inside zone, or it's slant, or I'm going to throw this fade up. And the splits are extremely wide, so the field is really, really spaced out. So a lot of college teams that want to run zone and things like that, all you have to do is be a capable thrower and be able to process simple information. And Hendon can do that at a high level, right? And that's why he picked defenses apart, because what Hupel and those guys did for him was, hey, just don't be bad. You're going to throw for 3,500 yards. And that's the problem with the offense. And I studied it, went through it, and it reminds me a lot of the Baylors, things like that. And you remember the Corey Colemans, and RG3 was incredible, but there was things that people didn't love. He wasn't such an elite athlete. He would have had a lot more knocks on his game. But people get on the Baylor receivers for never producing in the NFL because they were running in 10-yard windows, and they were all 4-4 guys. Jalen Hyatt. That's the problem with the offense and transition to the NFL and having to make reads, and windows are a lot tighter. The DBs are a lot better. The D coordinators are a lot I won't say smarter, but they're a lot more capable. Because it sounds like I'm knocking the coordinators in the SEC. Yeah, but you get out there, it's another level on the NFL, and nothing is vanilla or simple in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, in the NFL, look, you're making multiple reads per snap. You're making multiple reads pre-snap. As well. The biggest, I mean, if you think about just an NFL defense, they are rotating safeties constantly. You could read before the snap, oh, this is middle of the field open, two safeties back, they're up in press. Okay, so we know what we have here, and we're going to throw this beater over the middle or something like that. Or maybe a quick slant or something because the linebackers splits are in or something like that, right? You have that. And then right when the snap happens, they could rotate down into a middle of the field closed, and then they could have the safeties bailing, and you're going to be facing cover 3 zone. You're like, oh my gosh. What am I going against here?
It's crazy. And so you sit there and in college, at no point with all the talent that SEC has, what are you going to do when your primary receiver that's being read is being shadowed by Denzel Ward or Jair Alexander or any of those guys, or just whatever it may be? Now he's gone, right? You're reading that guy. Now, what if you can't hand that inside zone off? And that's one of Hendon's weaknesses, right? Because we talked about the age, the injury, the offense. He's very one read driven, because that's what he knows. What happens when you have to come off that read?
Right.
What happens? Are you going to force a bad error? Because he lets ball sail at times. He's not the best quarterback throwing on the run. Like you said, he gets kind of statuesque a little bit, but that's because he's comfortable with sitting in the pocket and making those throws, making those layups. It's not going to happen in the NFL. The blitzes get a little bit more exotic. They get the read on you. They know what you do well, what you don't do well. It's not black and white anymore. It's very gray. It's very
Yeah, no, it's a big concern, especially again with those splits. It's so much half read stuff, half field reads. You're either hitting that inside zone, or you're throwing the wheel, or you're throwing the the pump action wheel, the wide receiver screen, the quick slant, like you said. Yeah, and it's just not how the NFL works. And again, the splits too, like you mentioned, these guys are all standing outside the hash marks, right? The hash marks are a lot more in.
They're outside. Look, Jalen Hyatt lined up a yard from the out of bounds line. Nobody's doing. You're not doing it in the NFL.
No,
they're not doing it in the NFL. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and this is just us trying to emphasize that. Look, Will Levis, with all of his issues, he's playing in a pro-style offense. So he's an older quarterback, but 2 years in a pro-style offense. But you could go to Anthony Richardson and say, oh, he's going to be as behind as Hendon Hooker is as well. Okay, he's 20. Hendon Hooker's 26. There's a big difference.
A little bit over half a decade.
Yeah, there's a big difference there. So when you're comparing Hendon Hooker to these two guys, you could say right now, Hendon Hooker is a smarter quarterback, better whatever, better this, better that, more mature, all that stuff. But when you factor in his age and his injury is a little, I don't really care too much about the injury, but his age and that offense putting him behind mentally, and you got to still factor in, the footwork has some issues, the one read stuff, the statuesque thing, like I said at the beginning, that's terrifying. It's a terrifying profile, and I think we don't talk about profiles enough as evaluators and stuff because, evaluators had these things with athletic testing alone where it's like, hey, you have to hit this 120-inch broad jump for me to draft you or something at some positions, or you have to hit this 4.5 or we can't draft you. They also have these profiles for every player. Statistically, the quarterbacks that make it in the NFL are 21-year-olds with this kind of arm, this kind of athleticism, this kind of production, stuff like that. Hendon Hooker is a scary profile. It's a scary profile. And if you're an evaluator risking your job on a quarterback pick, Hendon Hooker is not a guy you're taking in round 1, maybe round 2, like mid round 2, late round 2, just because you're betting on that character. But profile wise, this is definitely the most concerning profile of anybody in that top 4, top 5, top 6 range in this class.
Yeah, I think Hendon. I would want him on my team. What
Yeah.
I'm giving, like if I'm a team with multiple twos, I think he's a guy that I would take if I need a backup, if I have a older quarterback that I can. I mean, he's not that young, but get a younger guy, get him ready. I think I'd be okay with him because he can do a lot of things well physically. Like I said, he has athleticism, he has an arm, but I'm not going to sit there and risk that in the early first round when I can go get an elite corner or an elite edge rusher. I just think they'll bring more value to my team long term that Hendon will. And like I said, I like him. I like him. I wouldn't be mad if he gets picked a little earlier than people say. I just don't think he's a top 10 guy.
No.
I don't think he's a top 10 pick at this point. Okay prospect, but like you said, it's a risky prospect, risky player to draft, especially high in the first round.
Yeah, high in the first, even late in the first round. I think it's kind of concerning because
the thing that messes up is Kyle Trask.
Yeah. You know what? That's fair. Look, if Kyle Trask can go round 2, I'm all, you know what? Yeah, 100%. If Kyle Trask went round 2, Hendon Hooker early round 2, not for the Colts, but for some other team. Yeah, wherever Kyle Trask went, I think Kyle Trask was the last pick of the second round.
Yeah. That's okay. Yeah, that's okay.
But I'll take Hendon Hooker above that then. Like if they're in the same class for sure. Like I'm taking Hendon Hooker over Kyle Trask. Like that's an easy decision. But yeah, no, I'm just concerned about the profile. Like and I think when you're a team like the Colts, where you're drafting this next guy to be your guy, you're not in a situation like the Vikings where if you take Hendon Hooker, you might be moving on from Kirk next year. So why not get a young-ish quarterback to get ready?
So because it almost seems like a joke, but like we're not. He's going to be 26 at the start of the season. Like that's not young, like at all for the NFL. We talk about not for long.
Yeah. Like to put in perspective, someone said on Twitter to me not too long ago. He said, "Oh yeah, he reminds me of a younger Jalen Hurts. He's older than Jalen Hurts.
He's older than a lot of guys. Like we talk about Joe Burrow, Tua, Lamar." Jalen, we can keep. Who else started as a young?
He's only a year. He's only a year younger than the Colts' current starter, Gardner Minshew. Who feels like he's been in the league forever.
How old is Mahomes? 27, 28?
Yeah, 27, 28. So they're close to the same age too. So it's just like we're not trying to make jokes about it because again, these quarterbacks they can play till 40. So you could get like a 13, 14 year career out of him, but. When he's already behind the learning curve, it's tough. But guys, coming up, we're going to talk about where Hendon Hooker can succeed in the NFL, either with the Colts or with another team, coming up right now. All right, Hag. So Hendon Hooker, when I look at him, again, you kind of have to draw up a way for him to utilize half-field read stuff, utilize things where he's not processing too much information. Again, I think he can get to that point someday and can be like Jalen Hurts, for instance. Again, we keep bringing up this Jalen Hurts stuff here, but Jalen Hurts coming out was not a great processor. He did some better things with Oklahoma. He was getting the passing game up a little bit, but he wasn't a great processor. So Shane Steichen and the Philadelphia Eagles kind of got him in some more comfortable areas where it's a lot more focused on his legs, letting him run, getting defenses down into that single high look. So they have to have that safety and to defend a really good run game, and then pulling it out occasionally for some play action passes down the field. I think that's a way he can succeed. And this is not my endorsement of getting him in a Shane Steichen offense, but I do think that kind of style for him where you can let him do some half-field read stuff or let him dominate off play action where he's just reading, a conflict defender or something like that. I think he can succeed at that early on and then grow from there. But outside of that, I don't really know if he's going to be ready to play from day one because, again, that offense puts him so far behind the needle.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think he's a day one starter in the NFL. I think he's a transition guy. Like you said, when you mentioned Minnesota earlier, I think he's that type of person where you look at a team that, like say he does go in the second round. Say the Vikings go grab another receiver, whatever they choose to do, right? Say they don't feel like there's a value in the first for drafting a QB, and then they pick up Hendon later, right? And then they move on. They give him a year, give him some elite weapons to throw to, give him a good running back to hand the ball off to. And like you said, offensively, like you can tailor some things to him because you have talent, right? Mm-hmm. Like we've talked about this whole series of episodes. It's a lot more important about where you go and what's around you than how high you go. Because every quarterback isn't a franchise saver. That's just not, everyone is it. Some need to be saved. Like they just need a captain to steer the ship. and everybody doesn't have to go out there and beat Patrick Mahomes. Everybody doesn't have to go out there and beat Joe Burrow, right? And I think that's what Hendon Hooker is. I think he's a Kirk Cousins type, a player. I think he could be a Derek Carr type of player. You know what I mean? And very, very good, successful. I know they get a lot of crap, but very successful players. I think that's his ceiling, though. I think he's a person that can make a lot of throws. He can make himself a lot of money in his NFL career, but I think he's a captain, not necessarily a leader of a nation, so to speak. He's the guy you get to steer the ship.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. So if the Colts were to select him and maybe make him a starter day one, because I mean, look, if you're taking a 26-year-old quarterback in the early second round, late first round, you got to start him at that point. I think if you're the Colts,
if you don't do it right away, you got to do it soon.
Yeah. So let's say the Colts do the crazy scenario. They take Will Anderson at 4. Their defense is fun and awesome. And then they take Hendon Hooker at 35. You're going to need that running game to get back. You're going to need that Jonathan Taylor running game to get back to what it was with Carson Wentz in 2021. Because if it's not like that, and you're asking Hendon Hooker, like you said, to be more than just that captain of the ship, to be the guy who pulls the ship on his back, that's just not going to be him, especially from day one. Again, you need to tailor so much to make this offense simplistic for him. And if you're making your offense simplistic for your offensive players, you're making it simplistic for the other team playing against you as well.
But Zach, the thing is, okay, because there's a guy at Ohio State. There's a guy that we talked about. It's okay because he's waiting. But continue. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay, but here's the thing. If you take Hendon Hooker at 35, and it leads to you being in a position to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. next year, you're not taking Marvin Harrison Jr. You're taking one of the other two. You're taking Caleb Williams. You're taking Drake May. You're taking, if Quinn Ewers, whatever the heck his name is, has a good year, you're taking one of those guys high. You're not taking Marvin Harrison Jr. And that's the thing again with Hendon Hooker. The problem with Hendon Hooker here, actually, we should have touched on this last one. So much of quarterback success in the NFL, and we talked about this with Will Levis, is how much commitment you're getting from the team. Hendon Hooker is not going to get any commitment from the team. Like maybe he goes round 1, he gets a little bit more than what we expect. But if he goes outside of round 1 with his age and where his draft capital is going to be, he's not going to get like any time. Like he just needs to get lucky and get on the field first and then hope that the success comes early, because no team is going to wait around and say, we have our franchise guy with this 26-year-old, 27-year-old, 28-year-old. I mean, we even saw with Geno Smith this past year, the Seahawks being a little cautious with that because he's an older quarterback, even though he has no tread on the tires.
He had to light it up to get that extension. Like, you're talking about one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL this season. Like, he had to do that, with minimal buy-in, with, saying I don't think they got lucky, but had an incredible rookie at running back and some elite weapons around him. That's what he needed to be successful. But like you said, quarterbacks need buy-in. If I'm a quarterback being drafted by a team, I want no part in a team that's not buying into me. The Eagles bought into Jalen Hurts.
Yes.
They completely bought into him, and good things happen. The Bills bought into Josh Allen. You know what I'm saying? Those type of things happen in order for those raw prospects to have success. Right. And that's what Hendon would need. Like you said, I just don't think he's going to get it.
Right. I think personality-wise, to bring this full circle and get to my final points on Hendon Hooker, I think personality-wise, it is easy to buy into this guy. Yeah. Awesome dude, great speaker, mature, really smart guy. And I do hope he has success in the NFL. It's just the profile is so scary, and I just don't think he's going to be successful. The gaudy numbers in college are great. He lit up the SEC. It's awesome. Like, you lit up the SEC. He was a Heisman candidate. It's a fake offense. It was a tough offense to evaluate. It's not just making excuses. What it was, it's the Bryce Petty thing. It's the RG3 obviously was a special athlete, but it's that kind of thing. It's those Baylor offenses. So Hendon Hooker for me is a guy where I'm betting on that character. I'm betting on that human being. I'm just not betting on that player. And I would not bet on that player with one of the Colts picks. I would bet on a Levis profile and character. I'd bet on a Richardson profile and character up higher than I would on a Hendon Hooker one at 35 or even at 79, because I just don't think it makes sense for the Colts.
Yeah, they don't have to. That's the thing. If they did it, if they took him, like you said, obviously you wouldn't go 4. But if you are they at 5?
They're at 4. And they have 4, 35, and 79.
So if you go at 4, obviously that I feel like that's reaching, like extremely
Yeah.
reaching. Like you're going to have a lot of anchor fans. At 35, for me personally, it's still a little too rich for him. But like we talk about, those premium positions always get pushed up.
Yeah.
They always get pushed up. So when you talk about quarterbacks, you talk about edge guys, you talk about tackles and corners, they all get pushed up just a little bit higher, probably 10 or so picks higher than they're supposed to. And that's why we have to talk about it, because it is a possibility. If he's there, we don't know how they have him graded. We don't know how his interviews went with them. They may love him. You know what I'm saying? From a physical standpoint, he can do all the things that they want him to do, right? But like you said, it's going to be the offense. It's going to be, can Jonathan Taylor get that running game back going? It's risky. It's risky business there.
It's always risky business with a quarterback, but that's why we have these episodes to talk about these guys in detail. Now, if you guys want us to do a Bryce Young episode, throw it in the comments. Let us know. We will do one. It's just, I want it to be something you guys check out, even though it's not an actual possibility, probably. If you guys don't want the Bryce Young one, throw it in the comments that we might actually do a cornerback episode. Just talk about corner options for the Colts. We won't talk about Gonzalez or Witherspoon because they're probably not, but we'll talk about some guys after that. Hag, I know for some reason you really like those two guys, but we'll yeah, they're all right. They're all right. We'll talk about some other corners. So you guys let us in the comments what you want next week, some cornerback talk or Bryce Young video. We'll do either one for y'all. But that's all we have for today, guys. We'll be back with you guys tomorrow to keep the draft preparation going. More pro day stuff. Speaking of Hendon Hooker, this was the perfect time to drop this episode because his pro day is going on today, Thursday, when you guys are watching this. Jake Arthur, my normal co-host, will actually be down there to speak with Hendon Hooker, to look at Hendon Hooker, and see exactly what he's doing down there. So make sure you're following him at Jake Arthur NFL, at Locked On Colts, at Zach Hicks 2, and obviously at John Hagler CR, the GOAT that's been jumping on here and talking quarterbacks. Also subscribe to Locked On Colts on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. And thank you guys for making Locked On Colts your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes. From free agency to the draft to salary cap management and more, join NFL experts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino as they take you through what it's like to build a successful NFL franchise every Monday through Friday. Find Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'll see you guys tomorrow.